It was around 3 o'clock on the afternoon of June 16th, 1968. A Yokosuka Line train was heading north from Yokosuka to Tokyo. As the train was traveling between Kita Kamakura Station and about 200 meters from Ofuna Station, luggage placed on the luggage rack of the sixth car from the front suddenly exploded just before the train entered Ofuna Station. Along with the loud blast, white smoke rose into the air. The steel panel on the ceiling of the car, the surrounding seats, and the window glass were destroyed. Screams and cries for help mixed together, instantly turning the scene into something horrifying. At the time of the explosion, there were 63 passengers in the sixth car where the bomb had been placed. It was a Sunday and also Father's Day. And many passengers were returning from recreational activities. The explosion left a 32-year-old man in critical condition because he had taken the direct force of the blast. Many others were also injured, including one person who needed 8 stitches to the head and another who lost their hearing. However, the most common injuries were caused by fragments from the explosive device flying outward. The critically injured man and the other wounded passengers were taken to the hospital. But by that evening, he was confirmed dead. The cause of death was severe brain injury caused by the force of the shockwave. It was said that he had a newborn daughter who had only recently been born and was still in the hospital. He had spent a happy afternoon visiting his daughter, and right after father and child parted with a warm embrace. He was caught in this tragedy, and it happened on Father's Day, an unbearably tragic incident. At that time, Japan had seen a series of train bombings, including the Sanyo Electric Railway bombing on June 18, 1967, which caused major public anxiety. The Sanyo incident also happened on Father's Day, just like this bombing on the Yokosuka Line. The Kanagawa Prefectural Police immediately opened an investigation. As the number of train bombings continued to rise, the National Police Agency designated this case as Major Case Number 107. This meant that not only the police in the area where the crime occurred would take part in the investigation, but police across Japan would also cooperate. Normally, this system was applied when cases believed to have been committed by the same perpetrator occurred in multiple areas. That showed the seriousness of the case. It was also one of the special cases in which the National Police Agency designated an incident as a major case with a wide investigative scope. But the larger reason was probably that police suspected this case might be connected to the Sanyo Electric Railway bombing that had happened 1 year earlier. That was a case in which they still had not found the perpetrator. Because the methods were similar, and because both cases happened on Father's Day, police could not rule out the possibility that the same person was behind both attacks. According to newspapers at the time, a total of about 25,000 investigator deployments were mobilized. That number was close to the population of a small town. For 10 days, 140 investigators rode trains between Yokohama and Yokosuka, as well as between Yokosuka and Kurihama, questioning passengers about any suspicious individuals. However, this effort produced no results. Meanwhile, the work of collecting evidence at the scene continued with extreme care, focusing mainly on the train car where the explosion had occurred. A total of 2,432 fingerprints were found on the car. Those fingerprints were compared with 480,000 tickets collected at stations along the Yokosuka Line on the day of the incident. At the scene, the explosion damaged the roof of the car, the ceiling, 4 steel and alloy panels, 7 seats, the luggage rack, 4 window panes, and 8 auxiliary parts of the train body. Fragments of the explosive device were scattered across the floor, leaving the car in a condition where it could no longer safely continue operating with passengers inside. Among the items left inside the train car, police found fragments of the timer switch used for the bomb, batteries, an iron pipe, a candy box, pieces of newspaper used for wrapping, and a paper bag. It was believed that the perpetrator had used the newspaper to wrap the explosive. When the bomb exploded, pieces of paper flew in all directions, went through the open windows, and stuck to the window frames. The explosive material used was identified as smokeless powder, a type sold commercially as propellant for shotgun shells. The dry cell battery holder used for detonation was a component from a Crown tape recorder, a model mainly sold for exam preparation. From the inspection mark on the product, police determined that fewer than 1,000 of these units had been shipped. In addition, police took on an extremely difficult task, piecing together thousands of newspaper fragments left at the scene. After that process, they successfully reconstructed the explosive device. Investigators discovered that the newspaper used to wrap the explosive device was the April 17, 1968 issue of the Mainichi Shimbun, Tokyo Tama edition. On that newspaper, there was a small printing error caused by the rotary press. Police also determined that this printing error appeared only on newspapers distributed in the Hachioji, Tachikawa, and Hino areas of Tokyo. From there, the investigation narrowed to people who had hunting gun licenses, or people close to them, who lived in the Hachioji, Tachikawa, and Hino areas, and also subscribed to the Mainichi. After that, investigators visited all 15,000 households in the area that were registered subscribers to the Mainichi Shimbun. Households that still had the April 17th issue were excluded from the investigation. For the remaining cases, police continued questioning them thoroughly. The investigation into the clues left behind at the scene helped the police narrow the search area significantly. They also succeeded in reconstructing the candy box that had contained the bomb and identified it as belonging to Misuzu Sohonten, a company based in Nagoya that produced and sold shachi-shaped Monaka sweets modeled after the shachi of Nagoya Castle. However, the box containing the Shachi Monaka sweets was a very common product, with more than 60,000 boxes sold every day. At first, this information seemed too distant to link directly to the perpetrator, but in reality, that very candy box led to the identification of the person behind the crime. On October 1st, 4 months after the incident, investigators were still continuing their work in the city of Hino. As they had done before, they showed residents flyers printed with an image of the Misuzu Sohonten candy box. At that point, one man provided an important statement. He said that the previous year, when he went to Nagoya on his honeymoon, he had bought Shachi Monaka sweets as souvenirs on the platform at Nagoya Station, then gave some boxes to his neighbors. One of those neighbors was Yoshinori Wakamatsu, 25 years old, who had moved into a separate rented house there about 1 year earlier. Wakamatsu had a hunting gun license. He worked for a construction company and regularly subscribed to the Mainichi. In addition, although he was only 25, people around him regarded him as intelligent, to the point that he could read technical drawings. By this point, all the elements had begun to match the profile of the suspect: his residence, his access to gunpowder, his possession of a hunting shotgun, and his subscription to the Mainichi. In addition, about 3 months before the case, people began to notice several strange behaviors from Wakamatsu. He had done things such as testing the power of gunpowder used for hunting guns. On the day of the incident, Wakamatsu had also taken the day off from work. On November 9, 1968, police went to Wakamatsu Yoshinori's workplace and asked him to voluntarily come to the police station for questioning. When police presented the evidence, Wakamatsu admitted to the crime and was arrested. Wakamatsu stated that he had placed a bomb with a timed detonation device on a Yokosuka Line train. The tape recorder was identified as something he had once bought to study conversational English. As for his motive, Wakamatsu said he wanted to vent his resentment toward his former girlfriend, who had once promised to marry him but later broke up with him. The reason he chose to bomb the Yokosuka Line was because his former girlfriend had once used that line when traveling from Yamagata to Tokyo. Wakamatsu was born in the city of Obanazawa in Yamagata Prefecture. His father was killed in action on Leyte Island. His family lived in poverty. From a young age, Wakamatsu had a quiet personality. His hobby was tinkering with and repairing machines. He did well in school and once dreamed of becoming a radio operator on a ship or a train driver. But his mother told him she did not have the money to send him to high school, so he was forced to give up that dream. After graduating from junior high school, he became an apprentice to a carpenter in Yamagata City. However, because he did not have a good relationship with his employer, he worked there for only about a year and a half before returning home. In 1960, Wakamatsu moved to Tokyo. After working for a time as an apprentice, he became a carpenter 3 years later. He had a strong desire to learn and studied on his own to qualify as a first-class architect. He also spent time studying mathematics and English, and he was very skilled with electricity. His co-workers called him an intellectual carpenter. He lived a stable and hard-working life. During this time, he also became fascinated with hunting guns and began collecting gunpowder. In February of 1967, he met again with a childhood friend who was living in Yokohama. However, her relationship with a male co-worker of Wakamatsu would become the direct reason everything fell apart. 20 years earlier, in March of 1947, a mother and her daughter from Tokyo began living in a storage shed on the land owned by Wakamatsu's family. The husband was originally from Obanazawa and had evacuated there during the war, but later, he died while serving a prison sentence for theft. With nowhere else to go, the mother and daughter began living in the shed on the Wakamatsu family's property. The daughter was the same age as Wakamatsu, and the two became very close. However, in March of 1950, the girl's mother remarried. After that, mother and daughter left Yamagata. Wakamatsu did not know where they had moved, and he did not pay much attention to it. Even so, Wakamatsu's mother and the girl's mother continued exchanging New Year's greeting cards. Later, the girl's mother told Wakamatsu that in a New Year's card from 1967, there was a message for him. "My daughter wants to see you, so please come visit." That was the first time Wakamatsu learned that the girl was now living in Totsuka Ward in the city of Yokohama. Feeling nostalgic, Wakamatsu sent a greeting letter to the girl's mother and received a reply from the girl herself. Then, on February 16th of that same year, they met again for the first time in 20 years. At the girl's request, Wakamatsu took her to his apartment in Nishi-Ochiai, then saw her off at Tokyo Station on the Yokosuka Line at platform number 13. After that, they began dating regularly. By March, they had started living together in Wakamatsu's apartment. Before long, the two exchanged promises to marry. However, Wakamatsu's mother fiercely opposed the plan. The reason was that the girl's father had been a criminal. While they were living together, the girl accidentally read a letter that Wakamatsu's mother had sent to him, and through it, she learned the truth. Before that, she had not known that her father had been a criminal and had died in prison. She was deeply shocked by the contents of the letter, but her current parents also did not want her to marry. The reason was that when she was 18 years old, she had registered a marriage with a man she did not love, under pressure from her parents. In any case, their relationship began to grow tense because both families opposed the marriage. Moreover, When the girl confided her troubles to a male co-worker of Wakamatsu, she fell in love with that man and moved out of the apartment. Wakamatsu could not forgive her. In his eyes, she was like a traitor who had broken a promise of marriage. At the same time, he also understood that the girl, who had repeatedly rejected his pleas for reconciliation, would never come back. Still shaken by the shock, Wakamatsu moved to the city of Hino. It was there that the idea of placing explosives on the Yokosuka Railway line began to form in his mind. At around 1:30 in the afternoon on June 16, 1968, Wakamatsu placed a homemade bomb, timed to explode at 3:30 in the afternoon, on the luggage rack of a train bound for Yokosuka. The train was scheduled to depart at 1:45 in the afternoon and was stopped at platform number 13 at Tokyo Station, the same platform where he had once seen that girl off. After getting off the train, Wakamatsu went straight to Fuchu Racecourse. Beforehand, he had checked that after arriving in Yokosuka, the train would turn around and return to Tokyo. At the time, the girl had just left her home in Yokohama and was riding the Yokosuka Line to Tokyo to meet her boyfriend when the explosion occurred. In Wakamatsu's distorted thinking, when the explosion happened, he wanted the girl to realize that everything was her fault and to cancel that date. On December 25, 1968, the first hearing was held at the Yokohama District Court. There, Wakamatsu admitted to the charges. On March 3, 1969, during Wakamatsu's trial, the prosecution requested the death penalty. Wakamatsu denied that he had intended to kill anyone. He claimed that he had been influenced by the Kusaka Jiro case and expressed hatred toward the series of cases that he believed had affected him. He strongly denied having any intent to kill. Wakamatsu said that if the Kusaka Jiro case had never appeared, he would not have carried out the train bombing. Simply put, he believed that if the Kusaka Jiro case had not caused those incidents, he would not have been influenced, and he would not have made a bomb. He wanted to say that he had only copied the Kusaka Jiro case. He claimed that someone dying was not what he had wanted, and in a sense, he believed that Kusaka Jiro had turned him into a criminal. The Kusaka Jiro case was a series of explosive attacks and threats in which the perpetrator was never arrested, and the statute of limitations later expired. But the court determined that Wakamatsu had conducted 3 explosion tests beforehand. Because of that, he was fully aware of the power of the explosives. The court concluded that he had intended to kill at least 13 victims who were sitting near the explosive device. On March 20th of the same year, the Yokohama District Court found Wakamatsu guilty of causing death by destroying a train, attempted murder, assault, and violating the Explosives Control Act. The court sentenced him to death, as requested by the prosecution. All of Wakamatsu's later appeals were rejected. During his time in prison, he became increasingly interested in Christianity and began studying Hebrew. At the same time, he also began writing tanka poetry. He regularly sent his tanka poems to a monthly magazine related to Christianity. Among the supporters who often visited Wakamatsu, he placed particular trust in a man named Aoki, and once begged him to take possession of his ashes after his death. Wakamatsu's decision to start writing tanka was influenced by other death row inmates who were also being held at the Tokyo detention house. In particular, he paid close attention to Sato Makoto, who had published a poetry collection under his real name while being held at the Sendai detention house, and who also worked as the chief editor of a literary coterie magazine. Wakamatsu repeatedly told his supporters that he wanted to publish his own poetry collection as soon as possible. However, each time, his supporters advised him to wait, saying they needed to consider the feelings of the victim's family. Sometime later, Wakamatsu complained that for Sato, who had always claimed innocence, the support members had worked tirelessly on his behalf. But for Wakamatsu himself, a man whose guilt was never in question, no one was willing to do the same. From that day on, Wakamatsu refused to meet with his supporters. On December 5, 1975, Wakamatsu was executed at the Tokyo Detention House. He was 32 years old at the time. His poetry collection was published under the pen name Sumitama Yoshiki, 20 years after his death.